there's 5 styles of conflicts that can be identified according to 2 dimensions: how assertive you are in pursuing your goal or your needs, and how cooperative you are in helping the other party involved in conflict getting their needs or their goals met. So at the lowest part of the 0, sort of like the origin of this, we have low on assertiveness and cooperativeness, that's avoiding. So some of us are so uncomfortable with conflict that we tend to most likely avoid any kind of conflict. Just out of curiosity, how many of you feel that you sometimes fall into the category of avoiding? Okay. Then you have, that's a pretty commonly encountered style, especially in competitive sports. America in particular, it's very big in sports. When you play a game of tennis against your opponent, or you play football, soccer, whatever, the goal is to win, right? And you win at the expense of the other person. So the other person loses, it's a win-lose situation. You can't really cooperate and say, hey, we can all win. Let's just do this together and have a big win. So no, you compete, right? So you're trying to pursue aggressively your goal and against the other person. Here, accommodating is when you let the other person win. So that's, so before competing, how many of you sometimes fall into the competing category? Use competing as a style, you feel? Come on. Who has played competitive sports here? Okay, so you have competed then. And it's good to be competitive. It's good at work. You will need to be competitive. Your boss will want you to be competitive. You need to win sometimes at the expense of somebody else. How many of you have bid for an object on eBay or bought something on Craigslist? How many of you have done that, right? When you do that, you try to get the best price, the best deal you can. So you're competing against the other person's interest, right? So accommodating, let the other person have their way. The mother or the father of a 3-year-old, like I'm in this stage of life, you have to accommodate your 3-year-old a lot, because your 3-year-old is not very capable of giving in. So accommodating, but you can accommodate your friends, your parents, siblings, others. How many of you feel that you accommodate often? Okay, accommodating. And then we have these 2 things in the middle. And you might ask yourself, what's the difference? Compromising and collaborating. In everyday language, you might be using those 2 words as synonyms, but there's a slight difference here. So compromising is essentially, the idea is we split the pie in the middle. So we both want this pie. Let's split it in the middle, right? Or you negotiating for the price of an object on Craigslist. Like let's say you're buying a used car. The person wants $5,000 for it. You want to pay $4,000. So let's split the difference. Let's agree to $4,500. Right? That would be compromising. Each party gives something and tries to meet the other party in the middle. That's compromising. Right? Now, collaborating is a stronger form in a way of compromising. It's not compromising. So in compromising, each party gives up something for the other party. In collaborating, the 2 parties try to brainstorm to redefine the problem, or to creatively solve the problem so that both can win and get all of their needs met, all of their goals met. So you reach a superior solution by not defining the situation as a win-lose kind of situation. You try to achieve a win-win. That's what's behind collaborating. Let me give you an example. It's a kind of corny example, but imagine you are going to the movies with your date, right? It's Friday night. One of you wants to see an action movie. The other one wants to see a romantic comedy. Right? Let's fall into the stereotype. Okay, the girl wants to see the romantic comedy. The guy wants to see the action movie. But, so compromising would be, okay, well, you get your way. We go see like say my wife wants to see a romantic comedy. We'll watch a romantic comedy tonight, and next time we go to the movies, we'll watch an action movie, right? That's compromising. Now, collaborating would be inquiring why, what's behind the goals. So we now have a discussion, you want to see a romantic comedy, why is that? Well, we haven't been very romantic lately. I wish we, with the baby and all, like we don't spend a lot of time together. What I really would love is to have, more romance between us. So that's, okay, it's not just, we don't just stick to the, whatever it is you're disagreeing about, but you try to take a broader picture. And now she asks me, and why do you want to see an action movie? Well, because, I'm missing adventure in my life. I feel like, I haven't gone out. I like to go out on adventures. I haven't done that much lately. How can we solve that? Oh, instead of going to the movies, we're going to buy a bottle of champagne and go have an adventurous romantic night on the beach, in Big Sur. That's kind of like, that would be collaborating. So we realized the main issue is not that one of us has to lose and give away, but if we get our brains together, we can get a better solution that everybody's happy. Nobody's sort of giving up something. So that's collaborating. So both can be useful. They're just different. Now, so when you look at all of these styles, do you believe that some are more effective than others? Which style do you think would not be very effective? So avoiding, okay, there are extreme situations. If somebody pulls a gun on you, like on Saturday night, late night at a bar, and maybe you're going to say, okay, well, I'm just leaving the scene. I'm not going to fight you. That could be a good thing to avoid that kind of conflict. So sometimes avoiding destructive conflict is a good thing. But if you're always avoiding all the conflicts, if you're conflict avoidant, not going to be very effective. Yes? Yeah, so accommodating could be one of those things. So occasionally it's good to accommodate. It's good to have that in your... I would say all of the styles have a place somewhere. But if you're always accommodating, you're going to be in trouble. You remember the story I told you about the woman who couldn't say no? Essentially what she was doing is accommodating all of the time. Because she, in a way she was afraid of conflict. She was afraid of people not liking her if she didn't say yes to everything. So what she investigated was, well, there are other styles, I can sort of put my needs out there and maybe get into competing a little bit. That's going to be more difficult. But I can also just ask, to be met in the middle. And, I can explore collaborating, Now, what about those three up there? Competing, compromising, collaborating. Do you think one is more effective than the others? Are they all equally effective? Take a guess. Yes? So it seems that collaborating is probably better than compromising, right? You can have a win-win as opposed to a win-lose. Now, collaborating takes more effort than compromising. It takes more time. It takes a stronger relationship. If you're buying a used car, you might not be able to go to collaborate because it's a one-time transaction and you're just negotiating the price. And you could be creative. You could be like, hey, I'll trade. People on Craigslist sometimes want to have a trade. I want your car. I have a used motorcycle that we could exchange, and that could be a form of trying to collaborate. But it takes time. It takes energy. It's not always possible. But if you can do collaborating instead of compromising, that's better. What about competing? Is it ever good? No, it's always bad. Yeah? That's what you think? Anybody thinks differently? I think differently. There's a yes.
It's not always bad, but
yeah.
If you do it the whole time,
right.
Always want to win,
yes.
Always want to compete,
yes.
it's definitely bad.
Yes. So again, some people are always in the competitive mode, always, with their friends, with their family, with their significant others at work. That gets old pretty fast, you know. So I'm just encouraging you to think about, there's a test, I didn't give you this test, there's a simple test if you want it, I can give it to you, where you answer a question and it tells you which are your favorite styles, or which are the styles you use most often. But you can probably intuitively guess, you know. Do you tend to primarily avoid conflict, accommodate, compete? Can you extend your style and try to explore other ways? So what I encourage, so how many people here would consider themselves uncomfortable with conflict and tend to either be avoidant or accommodating? Okay, I would put myself in that category myself. So for those of you who are in that category, the challenge is, can I see benefits? Well, can I have the courage to explore these other styles? And can I do small experiments? So what I would recommend is think about the coaching story that I told you about the Russian woman I coached who experimented with saying no, right? So I saw you like in particular like Shakti, like saying like you're very uncomfortable with conflict, right? So yes or no?
I'm very what?
Uncomfortable with conflict. You don't like. So what I would recommend is to ask yourself. So the first thing is say, okay, next time that there is a potential conflict, next time that I feel like somebody has, brushed me the wrong way, or you could think about something like next time we work in a team at Cal Poly or at work, and I don't agree with an approach. I think it's not the best approach. So I think I have a better solution. Right? I mean, are you okay with that? Are you okay with when you're disagreeing with a solution? Say, I think I have a better idea than that.
I think it's more like within friends.
Okay.
If you're really good friends with someone, that's very uncomfortable. But it's in a team, like you're kind of aiming towards one goal, which is getting a good grade.
Right.
So I think that's easier to tackle conflict. While if you were within like friends or families,
Right.
doing conflict is more.
I see. So that's a good point. So when we talk about conflict, we're talking about a whole wide range of occurrences. We're talking about simply saying, I don't agree with this. It could be a fairly rational, very cool, like emotionally not very high discussion. It could look like almost like problem solving. I think we should do this. No, I think we should do this. Well, let's think about it, So that could be a low form of conflict. And it could go to a fight, all the way to a fight, right? Chances are, as you remember from the class on worldviews, where do you get your cues from conflicts? Most likely from your family. How do your parents fight? Did they fight? When they fought, how did they fight? Was there yelling? Was there listening occurring? Was there resolution? Was there problem solving? Which style did they experiment? Was one of your parents more accommodating and the other one competing? Or did they, were they able to compromise? Or let me tell you this. I used to be very conflict avoidant, and I can trace it back to my parents fought a lot. My parents were not a happy couple. They ended up divorcing. But they stayed together until I was 20 years old. Feeling that it was the thing to do, the sacrifice to do for the children. I respect that, although I ask myself, is it really the best way? I don't know. They were certainly not avoiding, but they, mostly they would sort of compete. They would both be in a competing role, talking at each other, yelling at each other. There would not be any, I guess compromising. I think, what would happen is my father would just like climb up and not say much, and my mother would come up like blah, 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 like nag him until he would explode and, because he had been for so long like in, submarine mode, like just trying to hold it, that he would make all of his needs, all of his unexpressed needs would then come out, But, there was no real listening on either side. That's why I think active listening is such an important skill. Like, it's been an important skill for me. My family had no ability for active listening, very little one. So eventually, the way I was in relationships when I first started dating is I was very much in the avoiding realm. Because my assumption was conflict is really bad. There's nothing good comes out of conflict. Relationship gets damaged. It's very unpleasant. I feel really horrible. And with my first girlfriend, we never fought, and I thought it was a good thing. I told people, "Oh, we have a great relationship, we never fight," you know. And now when I hear couples tell me that, I'm like, uh-oh, there's trouble. That's a problem. Not fighting means that you're not resolving issues that need to be resolved. In deep relationships, or if I hear business partners say, we always agree on everything, I'm like, that's probably like not a good thing. You probably should be disagreeing on certain things. Are you afraid of disagreeing? I mean, you can't always be fully on the same page. You might be either a complete replication of each other, in which case you don't bring much to the table to each other, or you're just afraid to disagree. You're afraid of hurting your relationship. So fear of conflict puts you in there. And for me, I really had to learn to get to those other areas: competing, compromising, collaborating. So coming back to this, start with your feelings. Track your feelings. So do small experiments. So in the areas for you, if you're comfortable with disagreeing in a business environment, that's not necessarily where you want to do it, but families and friends, right? So start with, how do I feel? Like, and it starts with probably your heart is beating. You're probably like feeling like flustered. You might start to, blush. You might think, I can't do this. I want to flee. Observe all of that, and take a deep breath and experiment with other styles. Part of like the panic of fearing conflict is to think you're out of control, that there's nothing you can do. The experiment to try is, how can I assert my needs in a clear way, stick to my ground, and regain control, regain a sense of control. So that would be the sort of experiment. While you're trying a new behavior, while you're experimenting with competing, compromising, collaborating, follow, how do your feelings evolve? Because a solution to avoiding that flustering is to avoid, to evade, to exit the scene, turn away, suppress your feelings, But if you try something new and you express, instead of pushing it away, you're like, let me express my feelings. Let me tell that person I was really upset there. What you would probably find is, like, at first it's peaked. It's like the no that was over the top. Right? That's okay to do that. You have to allow yourself to, explode or do that, and forgive yourself when you do that, because that's the beginning of learning the skill. After you've allowed yourself to express your needs, your disagreements, your goals to others a few times, you will find a way to express them in a more appropriate way. If you don't express them directly, another way to do this is, you might not express them, but you could write them down. Say, what did I want to say really there? What is it that I wanted to say? Right? What would I have said if I had the guts to do it? You can start with that. And that helps you formulate, what was I feeling? So you can keep a journal of like, that, and then you can start to utter them with very good friends, very good people. Let me tell you this assumption now. What I realized, for me, strong relationships, the deepest relationships, best friends, really strong couples, strong partnerships, are people who can fight, and when they fight, it doesn't terminate the relationship. They listen to each other. Like, oh, I know you trust me. I know you care about me, and when you tell me that I hurt you, it doesn't mean like you calling me a name or that you call me a bad person. You're just telling me, hey, I didn't like that. And yeah, oh, okay, you didn't like that. I might still feel hurt by that for a moment. But then you tell me, but I still care about you, and I'd like to, talk about that. How can we evolve, past that problem? How can we solve it? It took me years of, in romantic relationship, it took me years to move from the avoiding to the sort of like, I would say, collaborating, where I find myself now. My wife is very good at having taught me how to collaborate. Because I still tend to either go to avoidance, or the way my style went was from avoiding to competing. Like, because I was so not used to it, like then when I was pulled out, kind of like my father, I guess, I would sort of get really defensive, get really upset, and start to defend myself and not hear what the other person was saying. If somebody tells me you hurt me there, I'm like, what? You hurt me there. Completely not hearing how did I affect you?